Hi everyone, my name is Alexis and I will be discussing mononucleosis, otherwise known as infectious mononucleosis. So here's a little questionnaire for you guys to answer and just to consider along the way through the presentation. So at the end, the answers will be given. So to start off, what is infectious mononucleosis? Well, infectious mononucleosis, also known as mono, which is the way I'll be referring to it throughout the presentation, it's a common clinical infection that causes pharyngitis, which is the inflammation of the throat, and cervical lymph node enlargement, which is the glands in the neck that are a part of our immune system, and mono basically makes them swollen. It's commonly associated with the Epstein-Barr virus, EBV, and is transmitted via saliving and kissing, which is why it's also known as the kissing disease. So the main cause of mono is EBV, the Epstein-Barr virus, which is a viral lifelong infection that can lead to mono. It's considered lifelong since it remains dormant in your body, meaning it stays inactive in your body, but it can be triggered, therefore activating the symptoms of it. It's a member of the herpes virus group, which is why it's also considered a gamma herpes virus and only occurs in humans. It affects over 95% of adults, and similar to mono, it can spread through saliva, sharing items with someone who's infected with it, such as drinking out of the same glass. It can also occur during the incubation phase, which is the phase between when someone is infected and before they begin showing the symptoms. Other ways that it can be transmitted is through coughing, sneezing, sexual contact, and blood transfusions. Symptoms include sore throat, fatigue, fever, swollen lymph nodes, rash, and enlarged spleen and liver. Other diseases that cause similar symptoms or infections that cause sore throat, such as streptococcal bacteria, which is strep throat, and cytomegalovirus, which is also known as CMV. And here are the symptoms of mono, and if you notice, it's similar to EBV. So you have the sore throat, fatigue, fever, swollen lymph nodes, rash, and enlarged spleen and liver. With mono, there are 3 stages that come with it. The first stage is prodrome, which is 3 to 5 days, which takes 3 to 5 days, and this is where the symptoms begin to appear. The second stage is acute, which takes about 2 to 4 weeks, and this is when the symptoms begin to get worse. And lastly, you have the convalescent stage, which takes up to 3 to 6 months, and it's basically the recovery phase. So how does mono affect sports? Well, though it's uncommon, a main risk of playing sports with mono is getting a ruptured spleen. Like I said, it's uncommon, occurring in only cases of 0.1 to 0.2%, but when they do occur, it occurs mostly in men, which make up 90% of these cases. This happens when a spleen is enlarged, which is a symptom of mono, and it basically makes it easier makes it easier and more likely for your spleen to burst, especially when the sport you play involves physical contact where force is being applied and there's pressure being put on your body. Other than that, mono is technically less severe disease in athletes. Only thing it can really affect is your performance, since, for example, the stages of mono where symptoms begin to surface and become more noticeable, it can hinder your performance. So, for example, sore throats can lead to nasal obstruction and acid reflux, making it harder for athletes to breathe when playing. Fatigue, which can make an athlete easily susceptible to pain and decrease in power output in their performance. And similar to sore throat and fatigue, fevers also can affect thermoregulation and cause dehydration and decrease an athlete's muscle strength, all of which can obstruct endurance and their strength, and therefore decreasing their athletic performance. So, as mentioned before, mono doesn't necessarily have a huge effect on sports, just only the rare case of getting the ruptured spleen, but there are instances where mono can become critical, causing severe complications. So some of these include autoimmune diseases such as multiple sclerosis, which is when the immune system attacks and destroys the myelin covering of the brain, also the eyes and the spinal cord, which can impair nerve signals, causing muscle weakness and pain, and even problems with memory. Jaundice, which is the buildup of bilirubin, a brown and yellow substance, and it builds up in the blood, making your white part of the eyes appear yellow. It can also lead to liver failure, such as hepatitis, which is the inflammation of the liver and can be considered acute or chronic, though mono is more coincided with acute hepatitis. Lastly, you have peritonsillar abscess, which is the bacterial infection that causes pus to collect next to tonsils and the back of the throat. And as you can see in the photo where the blue arrow is pointing to, you can see where in the back of the throat where that pus is building up. How to treat mono? So there aren't any specific ways to treat mono, but there are ways to help relieve the symptoms that come from having mono. So some of these are self-care, which means that you're making sure that you're taking care of your body to help support your body to heal and fight off the virus. And one of the ways you can do so is by resting. Taking into account your nutrition, ensuring that you're eating foods that contain vitamins that help aid in fighting off the virus, and also drinking plenty of water and fluids to help relieve the fever and sore throat and prevent dehydration that can come from having a fever. Medication is also another way to help treat mono with the use of antibiotics. Some of these antibiotics include penicillin, which help treat throat infection, ibuprofen to help relieve and treat mild to moderate pain, and acetaminophen, which helps bring down temperatures and treat fevers as well. Lastly, you have a splenectomy, which is a surgical procedure to treat ruptured spleens. It's when the removal of a spleen after injury or infection. So since getting a ruptured spleen because of mono is less likely, it's using splenectomy to treat mono is most likely an uncommon use as well. Lastly, ways to prevent the spread of mono, or just mono in general, would be to not share food and drinks with others. Mono is easily spread through saliva and contact with other people, so not sharing food or your drinks especially, or even items such as like toothbrushes. If your friend forgets their toothbrush and you want to let them borrow yours, don't, because you never know if they have mono and it can be spread to you. Also, using protection, mono can also be spread through sexual intercourse, so just using protection decreases the likelihood of you getting it. And lastly, maintaining hygienic procedures such as ensuring that you're clean and washing your hands after using the restroom, and even using hand sanitizer when you come into contact with dirty surfaces or even other people. It just decreases the chances of you getting mono and you getting infected with it. So that basically concludes my presentation for infectious mononucleosis. I hope you found it informative and gained some new understanding of infectious mononucleosis and what it is and how it's spread and ways to prevent it and so on. Before I officially conclude this presentation, I'll be sharing the answers, and hopefully you got them all correct, or at least some of them. But thank you and good luck for this upcoming semester.